So if you live in Connecticut, you've probably heard the buzz, and maybe a little bit of the panic, surrounding the state's new housing law. It's called Public Act 251, and boy, is it sparking a lot of debate. So what does it actually mean for your town? Let's break it down together. And this, right here, is the question at the very heart of the entire debate. Does this new law completely wipe out local control? It's a massive concern, and to really get to the bottom of it, we have to start with what the law actually says. All right, first things first. What exactly is Public Act 25-1? Let's just quickly go over the basics of what this new law is all about. Okay, probably the most important fact to get straight from the get-go. Public Act 251 isn't just some proposal. Nope. It's a full-blown, comprehensive law that's already been passed and is in effect right now. This is the new reality, the new legal landscape for every single town in the state, which is why figuring this out is so critical. And believe me, this law is broad. It touches on everything. New housing plans, big changes to the zoning process, new limits on parking. It even creates something called as-of-right development. That's a fancy term that basically means certain projects can just go ahead without special permits, as long as they check all the right boxes. It's a huge, wide-ranging piece of legislation, and its effects are being felt everywhere. Now, whenever you have a law this big, it's just no surprise that a ton of misinformation starts flying around. So for our next section, let's try to separate what's fact from what's fiction. What are the common fears, and what's the actual legal reality? Getting this part right is absolutely crucial. This slide really lays it all out. Let's tackle the biggest fear first, that local zoning is just gone. The reality? Nope. Site-specific reviews are still required for projects. What about the fear that the state can just override anything it wants? Well, this law doesn't and can't repeal the Connecticut Constitution. And the idea that towns are suddenly powerless when it comes to health and safety? Also false. Municipalities absolutely keep their core responsibility for public health, safety, and infrastructure. The whole power structure hasn't been torn down. So if towns still have all these responsibilities, where does that power actually come from? Well, this brings us to a really fundamental concept in Connecticut law. It's called home rule. To put it simply, home rule is the foundational power that lets towns and cities govern their own local affairs. And a massive part of that is managing the real-world impacts of land use and development. You know, this isn't just some old tradition, it's the actual legal bedrock of local control in Connecticut. And as you can see right here, home rule isn't just a nice idea. It's anchored in our state's most powerful legal documents. It's right there in the Constitution, it's spelled out in state law, and has been upheld by the courts again and again. This gives towns a real, legally defensible shield. So what does all this mean in the real world? It means your local commissions still have authority over really important, tangible stuff. They can review and regulate the specific impacts of a project, things like traffic, water, sewers. They are still responsible for protecting the environment, ensuring public safety, and making sure the town stays financially sound. But, and this is probably the single most important part of this whole explainer, this power isn't automatic. It has to be actively used. You see, in the legal world, silence can often be seen as consent. Let's dig into how that works. This right here is the critical risk. A town can literally give away its authority by accident, just by not doing anything. It's a legal idea called an implied waiver, and it happens when a town doesn't document its decisions or forgets to explicitly state its authority, or just approves projects without any written findings to back it up. If you don't use your power and put it on the record, a court can decide that you've waived it. If it's not in writing, it didn't happen. I want you to remember that phrase. It is the golden rule of land use law. When it comes to defending a town's decisions, that administrative record, the paper trail, is everything. If a concern about traffic or drainage was talked about for an hour in a meeting but never actually written down in the official findings, then in the eyes of a court, it's like it never even happened. Documentation is absolutely everything. Okay, so if documentation is the key to everything, what does that actually look like in practice? Our final section here lays out a really concrete action plan for both town officials and for residents. For town officials and commissions, the path forward is actually pretty clear. They can and should adopt local ordinances to uphold their own standards. They must require developers to hand over detailed site-specific reports on a project's impact. Commissions need to get in the habit of producing detailed written findings for every single decision they make. And crucially, they have to document everything from sewer capacity to the financial impact on the town, and they should explicitly state their constitutional authority in their resolution. And you know what? Residents have a really powerful role to play here too. Participating effectively isn't about shouting at meetings. It's about submitting written, fact-based comments that become part of the official record. Ask those tough, specific questions. How exactly will the traffic impact be handled? Who is paying for that sewer upgrade? And show up to support the commissions that are doing that hard, tedious work of documenting every little detail. That's how you help build a strong public record. Let's be really clear about something. None of this is about just blocking all new housing, period. It's not. It's about shifting the focus to engaged, informed governance. It's about making sure that when development does happen, it's done responsibly, with full accountability for how it impacts the community's safety, infrastructure, and resources. So we kind of end up right back where we started, but hopefully with a lot more clarity. Local control isn't gone, but it has to be earned. It has to be defended through deliberate action. A town's authority is ultimately proven by the official record that its commissions and its residents build together. So the real question now for every community in Connecticut is this: what will your town's record say?